Week 7 is in the books. We had some injuries. We had some big performances. We had a lot of disappointing wide receivers. I don't know if you noticed this, Danny, but a lot of the wide receivers disappointed this week. But yeah, the first thing we always kick these streams off with, we always go through injuries, then we go through our biggest takeaways, then we go through some dynasty trades that you guys submitted, and then we talk early waivers towards the tail end of this stream. We did have two major injuries. Brandon Ayuk going down with what appeared to be a torn ACL. Most fantasy doctors speculating it's a torn ACL, probably a number of other ligaments as well, considering it was a contact injury. Brutal. I have him 18% of my best ball teams. I have him in our flock league. I have him in my home league, have him in our tone setters league,
dynasty leagues.
Brutal injury, man. Brutal injury for my portfolio specifically. Brutal injury.
Yeah. It just, if you are a Niners fan, I mean, obviously CMC with what he does both on the ground and through the air, very pivotal piece, but we've seen what Jordan Mason's been. I think Brandon Ayuk is the most irredispensable. What opposite of dispensable? Undispensable, invaluable member of that offense, because when we're looking at the weapons core, he is the one consistent guy that can beat man coverage. And as much as I like Ricky Pearsall, is he going to consistently beat press coverage like Brandon Ayuk was? I understand Brandon Ayuk in fantasy has not been good, and you can make the case from a real-life perspective, hasn't been playing his best ball. But to unlock the 49ers Super Bowl ceiling, they would have needed Brandon Ayuk to play like he did last year. And without him in the lineup, I just don't know if they have the weapons at this point. Like Deebo Samuel's banged up. Christian McCaffrey, obviously, he's not back yet. We do expect him back, but he could even be lingering. George Kittle's the one guy I feel great about on a week-to-week basis. Like, I'm looking at the NFC right now, and we'll talk about one of my takeaways in a second. But at this point, man, outside of Minnesota and Detroit, I think there's severe question marks with the other teams.
You better start putting some respect on the Buccaneers, because if we win tonight, we're currently the 2 seed in the NFC right now.
Are you walking into Detroit or Minnesota and beating them in a playoff game?
We literally did it to Detroit this year.
In a playoff game.
No, not in a playoff game, but it was a raucous atmosphere playoff rematch from last year, and we beat them.
For sure, no. Great regular season win. With that being said, are you confident projecting it going into a playoff game? I think those are the two I'm most confident in the playoff setting right now.
I guess, but it's ironic a Cowboys fan is telling me that playoff success is not in the
Did I mention the Cowboys at all in that?
No, but it is funny to me. I think the Packers are also a good team. Jared points out. I mean, the whole NFC North has good teams in it, to be honest. So,
yeah, I mean, like the Bears are the 4th team in that division, and you can make the case they're like a top half NFC team at this point.
Yeah, no, you can. Like the Bears are a very solid team as the 4th team in that division. The other major injury that ended up happening was Deshaun Watson tearing his Achilles. So since been confirmed. I mean, you know, a lot of people like to go on Twitter. I guess there's some weird energy on Twitter from people being like, "Oh, karma's a bitch" and stuff. It's like, whatever, man. Like, does that make you feel better? Like, I don't get it. But either way, Deshaun Watson's fantasy outlook is, I mean, he's like a dead asset in Dynasty for sure. And then you also have, what's going to unfold with David Njoku and, you know, Cedric Tillman, who we'll talk about later on, and Jerry Jeudy, and Nick Chubb came back this week. Going to be interesting. The Browns are going to be in contention for the first pick in the draft, probably.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Some of the other major industries. Early morning. Deshaun Watson, like you mentioned, Aiden O'Connell placed on IR with that broken thumb. I mean, if you're relying upon Aiden O'Connell, like, sure, Gardner Minshew's just going to do the exact same shit in that offense, right?
Yeah, it doesn't affect shit, to be honest. Like Gardner Minshew starting, it's the same exact offense.
Dude, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, same shit, different smell.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah,
it's Taco Bell shits versus RB shits. That's what we're looking at between those two quarterbacks.
But I think we can move on to the minor injuries, like you said, with Deshaun Watson. It does sound like he's seeing Dr. Neil L. Trash. I think that's what his name is, the one that did the Aaron Rodgers Achilles. And I mean, Aaron Rodgers, has he played his best football? No, but I did not even remotely think he would look like a healthy quarterback coming off of what he suffered last year. So maybe or maybe not Deshaun Watson actually sees another NFL snap. That is yet to be seen, but he's at the doctor that would make it happen.
Well, okay, so if we get 80% of Deshaun Watson's production, what is he, the 38th best quarterback in the NFL right now?
Dude, I don't even know if he's the 38th best quarterback in the NFL right now. like before
No,
the
that's what I'm
injury.
saying. Like,
Like,
that's what he is now. So if he's not
Christ.
100%, we are getting like the 47th best quarterback in the NFL next year. Oh man,
Yeah,
brutal.
I was not actually drinking last night, but I will say, so if you guys are unfamiliar with the context of why, like for example, Thursday I missed, Saturday I was a little, out of it. I had a bachelor party on the Thursday night. Corey handled the live stream, and Saturday I did have a wedding. So, yeah, it's been a busy week for you, boy. Been a busy week for you, boy.
For sure. Yeah. We do have some minor injuries. I mean, DK Metcalf suffered an MCL sprain by the looks of it on the catch that he ended up making. The Seahawks have a bye in week 10. So it's possible he misses the next 2 games, gets healthy over the bye, and he's back in week 11. Or it's possible that we've actually seen DK Metcalf suffer an MCL sprain last year, and it looked way worse at the time.
He came back the next week. It was against the Chiefs, right?
He came back the next game. So it's possible that DK Metcalf is constructed uniquely and he does not miss any time with this injury. But it's just worth pointing out, I think, that they do have a bye in week 10. So if it's a 2-week injury, you'll be without Metcalf for 3 because they do have a bye week. So if he is dealing with some swelling and stuff like that, they might just be like, hey, we're going to kick it down to week 11 when he's back on the field. But we'll see. I mean, he literally played through this injury last year.
So it's not the greatest for my big dog team. I'm sure I mentioned to you. Again, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but right now, my wide receivers 2 and 3 were Nico Collins and DK Metcalf. Jamar Chase is my 1. Nico Collins is probably going to be back in week 10. DK Metcalf, like you said, hopefully he doesn't miss too much time, because if Nico Collins and DK Metcalf are out of my lineup, my starting wide receiver trio is going to, instead of being Chase, Collins, and Metcalf, have to most likely be Chase, Addison, and Lockett, assuming McMillan and Johnson don't work in ahead of any of those guys. So
yeah, my team's starting to come around a little bit. I had Nick Chubb on it, so I mean Nick Chubb obviously starting to contribute to the old roster. The wide receiver core is so young, and like Keon Coleman had a good game this week, so that's good news. I mean, if Metcalf is going to miss any time, that's good news for my JSN on that team. Troy Franklin's starting to play some snaps. He was one of my late round picks, so going to be an interesting team. My running back core is just an absolute horse. Like Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley were my top 2 picks, and they've been unreal so far. And then Chuba Hubbard was one of my other running backs, Nick Chubb, like I said, as well. And then I believe my other running back was somebody else that's kind of performing at the moment. Let me take a look. Because my team's actually in 5th right now, so it's in okay shape. Rico Dowdle was the other guy that I had, but Mike Evans, JSN, Keon Coleman, Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Xavier Legette, Jermaine Burton, Malachi Corley, and Troy Franklin. That's the problem with this team. And the fact that Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Sam Laporta, and Noah Fant have been a liability at my onesies when I figured I was good at those positions. I was like, oh, like those guys are going to lock them down all year long. Mahomes hasn't had a single game over like 15 fantasy points, and neither has Laporta. So those guys have not been great for me. But rattling through a couple other injuries, and then we can get to some of the takeaways. David Montgomery tweaked his knee. Maybe it's a mild MCL sprain. Did return in the game, but worth noting that if he has some swelling, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs gets a game or 2 where he is the starting running back.
Have him in my home league.
Yeah. And I talked about him as a trade target last week, so I feel pretty good about that call. He had a monster game. He was the highest scoring player, period, I think, this week so far on the slate. Jaden Daniels' rib injury looked minor, x-rays negative. He could miss a game or 2, but I'd imagine it's probably not a big deal.
I saw his mom tweeted out that Jaden's all ready to go. Like, it's funny because obviously a couple weeks ago, if you guys are not following the drama between Jesse Morse and Christian Watson's dad on Twitter, hilarious. So Christian Watson's dad replied to Jesse Morse saying that the injury wasn't bad. And Jesse Morse basically questioned his qualifications and said, I'm a doctor. I know what I'm talking about. To Christian Watson's dad, who literally knew what the injury diagnosis was.
To be fair, in Jesse's defense, he doesn't know who this guy is.
He put his name in quotations. That's the fucking most insane shit I've ever seen, by the way.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
It was funny though. And then we had some other injuries. Juju probably going to be out for a couple games with a hamstring pull. Debo Samuel didn't play at all really with an illness. He's probably back next week. But for the most part, Juju was the other
ridiculous, by the way, how the NFL is allowing this, because with Juju, he was questionable with a hamstring injury, and then he just basically doesn't play. And then with Debo, it's like, where's the report? The Niners, this happened with McCaffrey in week 1. Now it's happening with Debo. Like, we have to have a stern, like, rule in the NFL for what's going on with these teams behind the scenes right now, because there's no information on injuries until it happens. It feels like.
Yeah. These illnesses have been weird too. I guess there's some kind of bug going around too, because Kenneth Walker was playing his flu game this week and he ended up having a great game.
Absolutely partied on his birthday, by the way. That's what
You
happened.
think?
His birthday was October 20th, which was yesterday, and the illness got reported
I
the
don't
night
know.
before.
I think he might have just had an illness. Like people
He
speculated
conveniently
that he
got
was
sick on
partying
his
up.
birthday.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. He's a young dude. He's probably partying. You're right.
He's younger than me.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy
Yeah.
to think about. That Kenneth Walker's just out here doing this. Let's get into some of the takeaways. And both of our takeaways are in the AFC East to start things off. I'll let you get things kicked off with the London game, the first game that we watched yesterday. I had an all-timer of a tweet where I said that the Patriots were going to win after the first quarter, and the Jags proceeded to score like 22 unanswered points the minute after I sent that tweet away. But the point still remains that Drake Maye is a good quarterback.
Yeah, Maye is here to stay. Yeah, I had to add the little rhyme. Maye is here to stay is my point that I wrote down here. We may as well just start referring to him as Drake Marino because he is in pretty uncharted territory. 500 plus passing yards, 5 plus passing touchdowns in their first 2 career starts. Dan Marino and Drake Maye, good looking young kid on the right side there. Big shout out to Maye. But Drake Maye, man, I mean, let's just contextualize this. Jacoby Brissett, solid veteran bridge quarterback across how many of the last years? In the last 10 years, he's been in the NFL, 2016, so 8 years. He had 2 touchdowns in 5 games with this exact supporting cast. Drake Maye comes in, averages over 250 passing yards per game and 5 touchdowns in his first 2 career starts. And his wide receiver 1 basically was out of the game after the first drive with an illness with Mario Douglas. He's throwing to Hunter Henry, Jalen Polk, who can't catch a fucking can't catch a cold. I said can't catch.
You almost did it again. You almost just did it again.
Who can't catch a fucking cold. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, like it's such an unserious offense in terms of supporting cast. Their offensive line fucking reeks. Like we were watching that game, dude. How many times did Drake Maye face pressure within the first 2 seconds, step to the left, climb the pocket, and deliver something down the field, man? Like it's almost insane how the raw bad footwork quarterback that shouldn't start his entire first year immediately elevates every single other part of this offense. Like, dude, this 2024 class has a chance to be all-time great. It already looks like we potentially have 3 franchise quarterbacks here with the top 3 picks of the NFL draft, which, I mean, I'm sure if you're picking in the top 3 NFL franchise, you're hoping they become this, but how often do we see
the 2021 class, for example?
But that's what
it doesn't always happen.
How often does it happen that all 3 guys look this good? Like all 3 look like potential top 8 to 10 quarterbacks in their NFL career moving forward. Like it's pretty ridiculous how Caleb, Drake, and Jaden Daniels have looked so far. On top of that, I mean, you got like your Mac Jones, if you will, with a Bo Nix, who is probably a steady starter moving forward. Obviously, we haven't even seen Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy yet. We saw Michael Penix throw 1 14-yard pass this week, but for the foreseeable future, we expect Kirk Cousins to be the starter, man. Like if you get 5 starters alone from a quarterback class, that's a great spot to be, especially when 3 of them look like legitimate franchise guys moving forward. And with Drake Maye, man, like in terms of his fantasy aspects moving forward, obviously in Dynasty, he's like a top, you can even make the case he's a top 6 to 8 Dynasty quarterback moving forward with what I've seen.
I probably wouldn't go that far with him yet until I see him play a couple more games because, I mean, he looked good against the Texans. The Texans have a good defense. Yeah. The Jags are probably a bad
They got
defense.
Pressure, though. They got pressure.
I know that about them, but I mean, Mason's in the chat here. He says A-Rich or Maye rest of the season. Very easily, Drake Maye, dude. Like, so this is just going to be a take, just overall across the board. The whole like, oh, the Panthers ruined Bryce Young, or, you know, you need to let your quarterback sit, or all of these arguments, all they come back to is if the quarterback's good or not. Like it literally, that's if Drake Maye was a bad quarterback, he would look like the Patriots are failing.
This is the most excuse-filled offense you could possibly say. If Drake Maye looked bad so far, everybody would be like, well, you know, the offensive line, nobody expected him to look good. The fact that he's looking as good as he is with those circumstances, like, Mason, I got to roast you a little bit, man. Going into the week, you're questioning me picking up Drake Maye. You're offering me A-Rich. You're offering me Purdy. I feel fucking good about my Maye pickup considering I have him as a top 12 quarterback rest of the season.
Well, yeah, and just another point on the whole, like, so again, generally speaking, do we need to give young quarterbacks time? Yes. Is it too early to say that Anthony Richardson, for example, isn't going to be a good quarterback? Yes. But like, if you go back to the hit rates of what did your eyes tell you after their first 10 starts, our eyes told us Zach Wilson wasn't a good quarterback. Bryce Young wasn't a good quarterback. Our eyes have told us so far that Anthony Richardson isn't a good quarterback, that Drake Maye, you know, in 2 games so far, once we get through 10, we'll have more information. I think that might just honestly be the best indicator of if these guys are going to be franchise dudes or not, is if everybody unanimously goes, yeah, that guy can play.
I still have belief in Anthony Richardson, but when we contextualize this, if you dropped Drake Maye right now in the Indianapolis offense, what would we be saying about these wide receivers?
The NFL right now, he would be having an offensive rookie of the year campaign easily with Shane Steichen calling the plays, Indianapolis's offensive line, half the season of Jonathan Taylor, and Pittman, Downs, AD Mitchell, and Alec Pierce to throw to. He would be so much better than Anthony Richardson has been.
Yeah, dude, like as a Drake Maye stan, I had to eat my crow with obviously the Maye over Daniels at the start of the year. And credit to Daniels in fantasy. Obviously, he's a start option. He deserves to be at the top of startups, but it was a bad take for me to doubt Daniels. But my love for fucking Maye feels so much more vindicated now that the whole world is seeing what we saw last year on tape.
Yeah, and this is a good question to ask. Who's the last great rookie quarterback who was bad? Baker Mayfield, I guess?
Yeah, I guess, but like even like what is he, a top 15 level quarterback in the NFL? Like, is that bad? Like,
well, yeah,
it's
but
disappointing for a first pick, but like,
yeah, I mean, Jamarcus Russell's. I mean, we were a little young to know exactly the metrics of Jamarcus Russell, but like he was more of like how Richardson has been, where he's flashed big time throws more so than, you know, been consistent and put it together for strings at a time. But I kind of get your point. I mean, Jamarcus Russell, there was people that thought he was going to be half decent after his rookie season. So I won't.
Stats as a rookie.
I can't remember, but they were good enough that you were probably like, okay, this guy's raw. Like maybe he's going to be something or whatever. But yeah, it was
his second year. So in his first year, I mean, even still, I'm looking at these numbers, like 54% completion, 2 touchdowns, 4 picks in his first year.
Mac Jones second year, he went answer to this question.
Mac Jones is the one.
Yeah, Mac Jones was a Pro Bowler his rookie year and then didn't. Yeah. Like I think if you literally, if you have to go back to 20 plus years ago, it doesn't matter. That's a good point. Like
new NFL.
When you look and you're like, okay, let's say Drake Maye has a very respectable, good rookie season this year, and then the Patriots draft Ted McMillan in the first round. Like, dude, it's Kurt. It's like he's going to be a franchise dude. I mean, like it's more so that when you have Dynasty like Mac Jones, if you have a Mac Jones who like the Patriots don't build around and build upon that season.
Dude, that's the thing in Dynasty with him right now, dude, with Drake Maye. He has scored 20 plus points in his first 2 starts with this supporting cast, and he's going to get either a wide receiver 1 or a franchise tackle in the draft. We know that's the direction. The Patriots aren't going a defensive player if they pick in the top 5. It's going to be receiver, it's going to be tackle.
Who can play both sides of the ball.
Man, well, literally, like that would be the only way. And even still, it's like, if you're the Patriots and you know your whole future, your whole franchise is based off Maye succeeding, are you drafting Travis Hunter as a corner instead of Ted McMillan? Like, are you doing over Luther Burden?
I mean, maybe you trade down or whatever the case is, but maybe. Yeah, like you're probably in a position where you need to take an offensive player, and you probably also need to address offense in free agency as well. And, you know, you have your running back core is probably locked up if you're the Patriots. You also have, you know, some pieces on the offensive line that are young and maybe could get better and that type of thing. You have some ancillary wide receivers, but no real like one. Like if you added a number 1 receiver and a franchise left tackle, whether it's one's in free agency, one's in the draft or whatever, like, I mean, this team could be very good. Like Drake Maye can elevate this situation the way that we talked about coming into the season where, you know, does he Houston Texans this thing? They're doing it without the wins right now, basically.
Yeah. And what's stopping New England from saying, okay, we are taking our tackle in the top 5 and this second round pick that we have. Hey, Cincinnati, you need a second round pick for T. Higgins right now? You can't pay him? Don't worry, famo. I got you. We got money on deck. I'll give you this second rounder, which is going to be a top 35 pick. Is anybody going to offer more than that for T. Higgins?
No, probably not. I mean, T. Higgins is actually a free agent after the year, so it's possible that
I wasn't sure if they could
tag and trade him, I suppose.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, like, but yeah, I see what you mean. Like Drake Maye's got tons of upside, especially in Dynasty, man. Like he's, again, I know it's the Jaguars, but the Texans game, he looked good. If you just watch the game, you can just tell this guy's going to be a good quarterback. Yeah. That's really all it comes down to.
It's really that simple, dude. Like it's crazy that he had as good of a stat line as he did, but when you're watching the game, you're realizing, oh my God, there's so much context here to the point where on this play, he could have eaten a sack, or on this play, if Jalen Polk comes down with this contested target, like he could have had 300 plus passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns in that game very easily.
Oh, very easily in that game. Yeah. I mean, the Patriots weapons core and play calling and stuff really failed him in the second quarter on of that game, but they had a nice script to start the game, and Drake Maye looked like he was moving it like crazy. So we could probably stop talking about Drake Maye. We've been kind of, you know, gushing over him for the last like 10 minutes, but Staying in the AFC East, the Jets have Devontae Adams now, but they still find ways to look like the Jets against a team that outcoached them thoroughly on Sunday night with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Interesting notes, I would say, from a fantasy perspective, was that Devontae Adams was a full-time receiver. He was 98% of the team's routes, but Garrett Wilson out-targeted him 25% to 17%. Now, I don't know exactly what the alignment stuff was relating to where Joey Porter was on the field, but when I was watching the game, it looked like Adams was getting the Joey Porter treatment, not Garrett Wilson. And I just think this offense in general is still going to just be this like useless, annoying, we want them to be better than they are all season. Like it's starting to get to a point now with the Jets where I'm like, these guys should be way better than they are. Like they should be so much better than they are. The one saving grace is that Breece Hall is going to win people leagues.
We'll add this too, to be fair. You remember in the mid-second quarter, everybody was like, oh my God, this Jets offense is clicking. This Jets offense is flowing. Like they had 15 points in the first, 18 minutes
like
of the game?
In the first quarter and a half of every game.
But like I'm saying, like in the first 18 minutes, they looked that good, had all their points in the game, and then they just forgot how to script drives. Like, I don't know what happened.
Well, yeah. And dude, the one thing that makes no sense to me is anybody with eyes can tell that the Jets offensive line is a problem. And then you go to like PFF and they're like all ranked high. It's like,
well, that's my problem with PFF. And that's why I always combat when you mention the stat on PFF. I'm like, PFF stats, great. PFF grades, the most useless thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, so good, ranked good might be like, or ranked well might be a bit of an over exaggeration, but they're like the 17th ranked offensive line in the league. And I'm like, there's no way you can convince me that as a pass blocking unit or run blocking, they're worse, but I don't know. It's time to get Tyron Smith out of there, bro. He's fucking washed and he gets penalties. It feels like he gets like 3 penalties a game when I'm watching.
It's sad with Tyron, just as a Cowboys fan too, because it didn't look like this. Like last year is when I started noticing the signs. I think at this point, his neck is just that cooked. Like it looks like when he plays, when he was young, dude, like he was the most like in terms of movement ability, in terms of balance, like the best that I have seen for a guy as strong as he is. And then now it looks like he can't fucking move. Like he can't move. Again, I don't know if it's issues from the neck. I don't know if it's old age, just declining as a player, but like he's had some severe neck issues, some severe upper body issues in the last couple of years that I think are just starting to count up.
Yeah, no, it's been bad for the Jets just in general because like I don't think Aaron Rodgers is playing bad. I don't think
he's not.
Like I mean, Garrett Wilson has like at least one mistake every week that makes you go like, dude,
that pick was hilarious. I'm sorry,
you got to figure it out. That was bad. And then I mean, Devontae Adams is already like welcoming himself into the Jets. He drops his first pass. It's like, yeah, it's pretty much what happens once you put on that uniform. He looked pretty drippy, and I'm not going to lie. And 17 jersey, he had a good aesthetic to him. But Breece is the only guy on this offense that actually performs when you want him to, apparently.
Yeah, and it was all in the receiving game too. Like he didn't even do that good as a rusher.
No, and it's because the Jets offensive line can't block at all.
And I mean, speaking of just running backs that had a good week, obviously Breece Hall, 26.1 PPR points like you have listed here. Another guy that is just scorched earth anytime he's been healthy on the field. And a guy that, again, we weren't low on per se. Like I would say in terms of fantasy analysts, like we're about even pack. We liked him. We didn't love him. Was Joe Mixon. I think we both had him around, a high-end RB2, recognize some upside, but recognize the concerns of an older running back. These older running back concerns, like Derrick Henry's already made us look foolish, and I think Joe Mixon is going to be the one that I have ranked highest the rest of the season. I moved him up to my RB3 rest of the season. And I feel gross saying that out loud, but looking at the usage and looking how good he has been both as a talent and how good this offense projects moving forward, it's hard to combat why he shouldn't be a high-end running back one in this ranking. In the 3 games he has played without leaving in, he's been a top 3 running back, over 26 PPR points in each of those games. Last week, we saw limited usage coming off the ankle injury. In the 2 games he has been fully healthy in, has been a complete workhorse. 69+% of the snaps, 79+% of the rushing attempts, 40+% of the routes. And man, I got to eat crow in terms of, I said he was a fine pick that could be, a solid RB2, maybe low-end RB1. Did I think he would be a fucking league winner this year? Absolutely not. So kudos to Joe Mixon. Again, I've been vocal about him in past years saying, he's overrated, inefficient, this and that. It's like, maybe we're just learning more that the Bengals offense probably wasn't the best running scheme in the NFL, and the Texans have already been an improvement on that. Shout out Bobby Slowick.
Yeah, and Mason brings up the age cliff stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the way to handle this going forward is when you're building out like the bear and bull cases of players, it needs to factor into their price tag that they are older and that they could deal with more injuries and that they could, start to deteriorate as a player, because it's not like we've never seen a 2017 running back from this class that produced so many great running backs start to fall off. Because we saw it with Leonard Fournette. We saw it with Dalvin Cook. We saw it with, Zeke was 2016. But like we saw a bunch of guys that were previously elite start to taper off. It simply looks like a lot of these guys are built different and they're able to continue to play at a high level. Kamara, Mixon, Jones, all of these guys.
Do you think new age recovery is like helping with it or something?
Maybe.
Like,
I don't know. The thing that I'm just going to come back to is like it should be a half round to a full round discount off their price tag, but it's not going to preclude me from taking them if their outlook is good going forward. And I just looked. I have 8.5% Joe Mixon in underdog, so I was drafting him. It's not like I barely drafted the guy. So
let me see what I ended up with on him. I don't think I was that far off either. I have him on my big dog team, for example. Mixon, I clicked the wrong draft. Exposures 112 draft.
Either way, my point is just that these guys
7.1%.
Yeah, it's not like we can look at this season and be like, okay, age doesn't matter for running backs anymore, because it still matters. It's just it should only factor into their price tag to a certain point, and it's weighing your downside risk scenarios. Like again, there was within the range of outcomes that Joe Mixon didn't look like the same player this year. Like it was within the range of outcomes. But
we were literally talking 2 weeks ago about how did we draft Joe Mixon? Of course, he was going to suffer an injury when he was going through the ankle injury. That's what a lot of people were saying when he missed a few weeks. Because I think he suffered it in week 2. People were like, oh, yeah, he's going to be back in week 4. He's going to be back in week 5. And he didn't return until week 6. And people were like, is this just going to be something that lingers rest of the season? Like, there's risk levels in terms, I would say, the market value retention for these guys. Because if any negative happens to an older running back, the market almost like flips on them in terms of tradability. Whereas if Gibbs goes through, like, for example, Gibbs had a couple bad games in a row. Did his market value actually decrease in any league you were in?
Yeah, no. Well, and prior to this week, like people weren't super excited about like Josh Jacobs, for example, who is an older running back. And like, again, it is really all going to just come down to like, is the player still good? Do we know he's still good? Has he shown signs of decline? And for a guy like Mixon, for example, or a guy like Jones, like Aaron Jones, for example, they hadn't really shown signs of decline yet. They'd shown signs that, when they suffer an injury, it's going to set them back a little bit further than like the older running backs or the younger running backs would. But the outlook was good. We looked at, Joe Mixon this year, and I was like, yeah, I actually am quite in on Joe Mixon because I believe in the Texans offense. And that's pretty much all there was to it. That was the reason I drafted him.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I needed to draft a running back or whatever. It was because I was on the board in the 5th round in underdog drafts. And I was like, I think that this guy should be going in the early 3rd based on what his outlook is. So that's, again, I didn't draft him a whole lot of home leagues for that reason, because I think that was going to happen. Like a lot of people in home leagues were going to take him in the early 3rd or the mid 3rd or whatever. But yeah, it's pretty clear to me that the whole conversation around like age cliffs and things of that nature has shifted to some degree. Like I'm not going to be adamantly against anybody over the age cliff just by default. It's just gonna, if I've seen signs of decline, they're over the age cliff, and I have questions about their situation and their team, then I have issues with it. But when it's a seamless fit, like Derrick Henry with the Ravens or like Joe Mixon with the Texans, it's like I probably shouldn't really care about the age cliff stuff. It factors into their downside risk. You discount them half a round, full round, whatever in ADP, but for the most part, it's not something that you really factor in.
And Mason, I don't know if you're still in here right now, but this is my official top 5 moving forward. Corey saw it before the stream, and I'll show you guys over on Flock. But like I adjusted my rankings, and I'm looking through it again. If you want to argue Walker, Bijan over Mixon, I think that's fine, especially given, like you said, some of the concerns. But I'm not worried about the ankle injury at this point. And that RB1 bell cow role that he has with the Texans is what, a top 3 most valuable role in the league right now? Top 2, maybe even?
It's definitely up. I mean, I still think I would prefer Kyron Williams' role with the Rams. I would prefer, it's a short list. It's probably 4 or 5 guys that I would say are comfortably in the same boat, especially considering how good the Texans offense is. And it's weird, man. Like when Mixon's out there, they turn into this like run heavy, CJ Stroud threw like 86 yards or something. Like, I don't know what the hell happened in that game. And maybe it's just because Collins is injured and it was a tough matchup against the Packers.
You remember when everybody said how all three wide receivers are the same level on the Texans coming into the year, and as soon as the actual elite one goes out, they just revert back to a smash mouth team? Anyways, I'm trying to say if Nico Collins was on the field, they'd actually throw the ball well.
Danny with his 400th victory lap of Nico Collins on the year here.
The jersey's in the background. I had to.
Yeah. So let's talk about some other backfields too, since we were talking about Joe Mixon. There was some changes in some backfields that I thought were interesting. Tyrone Tracy, for example, appears to be the lead back with the Giants. It got, swept under the rug because the Giants, this is a real stat, by the way, the lowest yardage output in 100 years for the Giants against the Eagles. I saw a Giants beat reporter tweet this out.
Including sacks.
Yeah, including sacks. It was the lowest yardage output in 100 years for the New York Giants this week, which is insane. But swept under the rug and all of that was the fact that Tyrone Tracy played 67% of the snaps, 68% of the routes, compared to Singletary's 22% of the snaps and 15% of the routes. Now, was this because Devin Singletary was coming off of the injury? Is this 100% transferable to future weeks? And we just now start Tyrone Tracy as the very clear number one back here? Or now that Singletary is back, and maybe if it's a closer game than what we saw this week, it's a little bit more of a 50-50. Obviously, I think it's without a doubt that Tracy is the more valuable running back going forward between the two of them. But I'm not going to go super crazy here and throw Tracy as like a top 22 running back rest of the season, like I'm sure you're going to do.
So I was actually going through my rest of season rankings. I currently have him at 24. The guys that I have directly in front of him, actually, I'm sorry, I know he's been good. I don't think there's any way I could take DeAndre Swift over him and Brooks at this point. I know he's.
You can't take DeAndre Swift over.
I have him. I have him ranked higher, and I think I have to.
You are insane. You are insane.
You know how badly I want to revert that. Again, I have Swift higher, but I want to reverse it.
That's way too high. I need to again.
Where do you have him ranked? He's 24 for me right now.
So I gotta actually adjust it. But
I have him one spot behind Brooks and one spot ahead of Chubb.
Well, who would you? So I simply can't. I can't put him that as high as you're putting him personally.
Where do you have him ranked then? You're not putting Bucky Irving or shit over him, are you?
I have Irving at 32 and Tracy at 30. I still need to go through and actually
There's no way you have Ramondre over him. I'm sorry. That's ridiculous.
I do have Ramondre.
That's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, we have, first of all, Ramondre Stevenson has multiple games where he's been like a high-end RB1 this year. The offense is improving, and Ramondre Stevenson has a history of getting a big workload, whereas Tyrone Tracy does not, because Ramondre Stevenson is one of the highest paid running backs in the league.
Sure, and now with that being said, anytime Antonio Gibson's active, we hear reports every other week about how he's going to take the fucking
Stevenson
job.
Came in with one limited practice under his belt on Friday. That's why he was limited in this game.
You're faded if you're taking him over Tracy.
I'm not taking Tracy
faded.
After one game where Singletary
Mason, do not offer me Stevenson for Tracy right now, because I will tell you I'm declining it. Okay.
No, there's no way that we can say confidently that Tracy is over Stevenson. I feel good about Tracy going
70% snap rookie running back. Yeah, the offense was bad this week.
But here's the thing, Danny, what usually happens when you're out for a number of weeks as a running back, and I'm talking specifically about Singletary, what usually happens?
Sure. I mean,
we already get your full. We heard going into the game was a blowout.
We heard going into the game that Tracy would see a bigger role, and then he got 70% of the snaps as a rookie running back.
And it's good. And I'm gonna move him. I'm gonna move him up next week if it happens again. And I already did move him up. I moved him up like 6 or 7 spots already.
Yeah, I mean, I have him aggressively ranked. And to be fair, I was higher on the talent than you were coming in.
I still like the player. Like there's nothing against Tyrone Tracy. I think he's better than Singletary. I'm worried that we're all going to overreact to a 1 week sample of Tracy being the lead back there. And then we're just going to pretend Devin Singletary doesn't exist. And Devin Singletary, as he always does, will get back in the good graces of the coaching staff and potentially make this 50-50 share. And I agree with Wanya here. Don't overreact like you did with the Saints to the Super Bowl.
Are you not going to bring up any of Corey's takes?
New Orleans 49ers after 2 weeks?
Hey, you going to bring up any of your bad takes, or are you just going to rinse on my one?
No, it's not. I've had bad takes too, obviously. I'm just saying this to me feels like an overreaction the way that the Saints one was.
Why though?
Because it's
Tyrone Tracy's evidently been better than Devin Singletary on the field this year. He has shown RB1 upside in the 2 weeks prior to this week. Like, what are we talking about?
I'm talking.
We
Danny,
know what Stevenson's range of outcome is.
Running backs take time to get back to their full workloads after being out multiple weeks. That's like Singletary.
We heard Brian Dable already said that Tracy's going to get more work moving forward. We already heard that.
Yeah, more work. The Bills said that about Ray Davis, and he still played behind James Cook.
Okay, but it's the fucking Bills. Like what?
I know, but I'm saying Tracy is going to be more of a part of this backfield than he was.
Has Ray Davis looked better than James Cook at all this year? Because I can confidently say Tracy's looked better than Singletary.
No, but we can say confidently that Ray Davis looked good last Monday night, and it wouldn't have shocked any of us if he had more of a workload than he did.
Better than Cook, though?
No. Right. Definitely not. I'm just saying Singletary coming off a multi-week absence is not going to play 22% of the snaps, a game in which the Giants were destroyed.
I guess we'll see then. Because I think this is Tracy's backfield and we're all looking at moving forward.
I hope it is. I have him in a lot of places. I don't think it's going to be this big of a split every week. 67% of the snaps and 68% route.
I said coming into the week, I thought it'd be a 60+% Tracy split. So this is actually what I expected.
I'm skeptical for
sure. You know that's exactly what I said. So this is actually
no, you did. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying it might not stay this way if Singletary is healthy going forward.
Yeah, no, fair. I think Singletary is moved past at this point.
Maybe. Devon Achane also down to a 57% snap share. He's been over 60% and over almost.
Sorry, Norn. I can confidently say that both have looked bad. That's what I can say.
For sure. Yeah. Devon Achane, by the way, down in snaps with Raheem Mostert coming back. Jalen Wright a little bit more involved as well. Something to monitor. Tua potentially coming back this week. I think they desperately need him back.
They lost 16-10 to the Colts defense. 10 points against the Colts defense.
Terrible. Tank Bigsby, much to the chagrin of Danny, had 27 opportunities and a top 5 week on 66% of the snaps with ETN out. At the very least, we can say that Tank Bigsby is one of the better handcuffs in fantasy, and we'll have to wait and see what happens here. Now, Doug
There's
Peterson
no way you can rank ETN over him, though.
Well, I'm not, first of all.
Okay,
but what I will say is the first thing that Doug Peterson said after the game is, I don't believe you should lose your job to injury. Travis Etienne is still our starting running back, is what he said. So while I would probably, gun to my head, prefer Tank Bigsby over ETN, A, it's not a big difference. And B, I think ETN is worth an offer if you are desperate for running back talent in your league.
Okay.
Because how low can ETN's value get? It is so effing low right now that you could probably get him for nothing.
Yeah. By the way, you guys are watching live as I just make the most inconsequential trade of all time in the Flock League.
What did you just trade? Oh, the kicker
traded the kicker for $3.
Interesting. Yeah. So he traded Sal, a kicker, Will Reichert, for $3, which is fun for nobody. And then the other backfield trend I wanted to talk about is Bijan Robinson obituaries were premature. Again, I really don't get what it is with Bijan, bro. Everyone's scarred from Arthur Smith at the second the guy plays like a low snap share game. Everyone freaks out like Tyler Algier is going to take over the backfield. Well, Bijan had 69% of the snaps this week and 26 opportunities, and he was a top 5 running back on the week. So let's not worry about Bijan Robinson. So we already talked about Watson. I mean, the other thing that I just wanted to mention quickly, it was my takeaway number 3, but we already addressed Watson. So I just want to address quickly that David Njoku led the team with a 32% target share last week and a 28% target share this week, and is very clearly a top 5-6 tight end at minimum, and maybe even better rest of season. And also too, Nick Chubb scored and is going to start to ramp up over the next couple of weeks. Where do you have Nick Chubb ranked among running backs rest of the season? That would be an interesting one.
So I currently have Chubb as my RB 25, barely ahead of Bigsby and Hunt. Hunt is interesting because that's expecting Pacheco to be back within the next month or so. If we got reports tomorrow that Pacheco was expected to be out for the year / until the playoffs, I think you can even argue Hunt as like a top 18 type of running back rest of the season. But I'm at 27 because it's a short term. I view him as an RB2. Long term with Pacheco, when Pacheco comes back, I don't think he's going to be useful. I have Chubb at 25 though. I have him sandwiched between like Brooks, Tracy, Chubb, Bigsby, Hunt, and then like I mentioned, Stevenson.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I still have a couple other boring workload guys mixed into that range as well, like Najee and Javonte Williams and Rico Dowdle and some guys like that.
I probably have to move Najee up a bit. So Mason, I have to drop a good amount because it does sound like McCaffrey's going to be back, A, and B. The whole thesis for me saying, okay, they're going to hold McCaffrey out into the playoffs is that they actually fucking make the playoffs. Like at this point, they are what, 3-4?
Yeah,
Like, they need
I
wins.
tend to think that the 49ers will still be in a position where they want to bring McCaffrey back. Like, I'm not gonna come here and say that they're gonna be like 3-6 by the time McCaffrey is coming back from
No,
injury.
I don't disagree. What I'm trying to say is the thesis was if they were like a 6-1, 5-2 football team, maybe they prolong that as long as they can. But at 3-4, now that they need wins, like, you can't just say, "Hey, McCaffrey, you can come back first week of the playoffs," because you have to
You're saying as a
playoffs.
positive signal for McCaffrey.
As a positive for McCaffrey,
I
because
see,
now that they need wins, like, dude, like, again, I don't expect the Cowboys to beat them. That's not what I'm saying. But on Sunday Night Football, if the Cowboys were to beat San Francisco and the San Francisco 49ers fell to 3-5, like, you would need at that point to win, what, 7 of your last 9 games? Are you doing that without McCaffrey and Ayuk on the field?
No, probably not. Unless Pearsall and Jennings just hop in right to this offense and look really good, and Debo is Debo going forward, and Kittle is Kittle, and Mason plays well until McCaffrey gets back. I'm not really that worried about the 49ers. I think a lot of people are very concerned about them right now and their playoff chances. Like, does it hurt their chance to win a Super Bowl without Ayuk? Absolutely. But I still think they could go to.
I don't think they make the NFC title game without Ayuk.
I think they could. I'm not saying that, like, coming into the year they were like favorites to go to the Super Bowl from the NFC. So they are no longer that. They are in a tier with probably even below, the Lions and some of the other teams. They're
Very
probably like
the Lions and the Vikings,
secondary contender in the NFC right now. But I still think they're a top 3 to 4 team in the conference.
I mean, let's just go right to it. So my fourth point was I think that the Lions Vikings was an NFC Championship preview. When I watched that game, it looked like a different level of NFC football this year. What do you mean half right? You expect the Vikings?
The Vikings are not making the NFC.
Why though? Why?
What's wrong with the Vikings? This is how I view the Vikings. I think it's very similar to what we saw from Cleveland last year, where
I disagree. Darnold's been awesome. Darnold's been awesome. Sean Watson has never been as good as Darnold.
I don't know about awesome. I don't know about awesome.
Since 2019.
He's been great.
Darnold?
He's been great.
What do you mean? Like, he's been phenomenal.
I'm still skeptical, man. I like, maybe I'm stupid, but I'm still skeptical that Sam Darnold is eventually not going to look like a franchise quarterback, and he's going to look like a.
But what of his play has dictated that? He's had one bad game in his 6 that he's played, and it was against the Jets in London.
Oh, there's not much I can say that, like, would point to him not being good right now. He's playing well right now. I'm concerned that this, like, eventually he's going to look more like Sam Darnold of old at some point, and it could come in crunch time. They're kind of, I guess I look at
the Vikings to me are basically
at the wrong time is what I would say about them.
When I look at that offense, I mean, the Darnold right now with what we're seeing, is it okay? They got a great scheme. They got great personnel. They are going to be adding TJ Hawkinson back. Their offensive line's played really well. Like, to me, it's a similar situation to how Purdy thrived with the Niners, where, like, you have all these great supporting players. You have a great schemer with Kevin O'Connell, and Darnold's just got to play efficient ball. And that's what he's done this year, man. He has efficient ball.
He's been good. I would not go as far as to say he's as good as Purdy at all.
I think Purdy's better. Don't get me wrong, but I think could he play a Purdy-like role in this offense and just distribute to your playmakers? Because obviously Jefferson's probably the best receiver in the league, if not top 2. Addison looking good.
Not even Hawkinson yet.
Dude, that's what I mean. TJ Hawkinson hasn't even played, and they put up 29 points on the Lions this week, man.
Yeah, no, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. They're definitely a top 5 team in the NFC. I just think that they're
top 5's underplaying it. I think they're 2 or 3 at worst.
Okay, well, I think that the Lions are better than them.
I would agree with the Lions. No other team is for certain.
I think that the Packers are better than them.
That's the one I think is fine. I think those are the top 3.
Okay, well,
there's no other team you could put ahead of them. Come on.
I also think
don't say it.
I think that Tampa is better than them.
You're insane.
I also think that Philly is better than them too.
You are insane.
When it counts. I'm talking not right now. Who's playing better now? The Vikings.
Brian Flores would have you guys in fucking Alcatraz.
You realize Todd Bowles was Brian Flores before Brian Flores, right?
What I'm trying to say is Brian Flores. Also, you think the Eagles' dysfunction is stopping Brian Flores?
They're a 4-2 football team right now who has been dealing with injuries all year and are starting to play better.
Real, man. Let's be for real. The Vikings have looked unbelievable.
The Vikings have looked great.
Tampa and Philly over Minnesota is fucking faded. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Tampa and Philly have playoff experience. Tampa and Philly have been dealing with injuries all year
Faded.
and are starting to get healthy. Like everyone's saying, Tampa's got a terrible defense, bro. Like we didn't have Winfield, who's the best player on our defense for like
the Vikings
4
are
games.
beating you by 10 plus in a playoff atmosphere. I'm telling you that right now.
You say the Vikings would beat us by 10 plus?
Absolutely. You guys travel to play Minnesota on the dude. Brian Flores would have you guys in Alcatraz.
Danny, they just lost to a Lions team that we beat.
Brother. Playoff setting. You think Tampa's walking into Minnesota and
the playoff setting? The Minnesota Vikings lost to the Giants 2 years ago in the playoffs.
You are faded. A completely different fucking team. Their defense was awful back then. Daniel Jones fucking passed all over them in the playoff game. You think he's doing against Brian Flores?
I don't know, dude. Maybe I'll be stupid. Maybe I'll look stupid for this take. Maybe I'll look stupid for this take. I guess my point.
Hey, if you're gonna roast me for being a biased Cowboys fan, buddy, people are. I didn't mention the Cowboys once in this conversation, by the way.
No, you didn't. To be honest, like, have you guys ever heard me be like super biased about my team? I don't think I'm being biased right now. I think that Tampa Bay is absolutely a top 3 to 5 team in the NFC. We're currently the 2 seed in the conference right now when we beat the best team in the conference.
Current form, sure. I'm telling you right now, you go into an NFC championship game, you're getting dog walked by both of those NFC North teams and probably all 3 of the top NFC North teams.
Okay. Sure. We didn't get dog walked by the Lions last year. We were 1 drive away from winning the game, and we beat them already this season, and they're the best team in the conference.
Sure. You won an early season game against the Lions. Awesome.
Okay. People are saying I'm tripping. Please come back to me tomorrow after we beat the Ravens tonight and tell me if we're still.
Buddy, you guys are losing by 2 tugs tonight. Let's be real.
We got Is AJ?
AJ, tell him.
Okay. We're a Bucky Irving face mask away from beating you guys also and being a 5-1 football team. Anyways. My point is actually more anti-Vikings than it is pro-Buccaneers. Everyone's saying that I'm biased as hell. It's more anti-Vikings of a take, to be honest. I think that there's a big cluster of secondary contenders in the NFC. And I guess my point is that the Bucs, the Eagles, even still the 49ers, the Vikings, the Packers, you could group in maybe one other like NFC West team or NFC East team into that group, like the Commanders or something like that. I think they're as good as the Vikings are. It's not really that I think the Bucs are like really all this much better than the Vikings. I think that the Vikings are just a little bit overrated.
So can we talk about the teams that the Vikings have dog walked this year?
Oh, they beat some. I mean, the 49ers don't look as good of a team right now.
A healthy 49ers team in week 2, by the way. Houston, before they lost Nico Collins. Green Bay, on the road.
Yeah.
Like,
they've got some great wins, man. They've got some great wins. I'm not saying that they have been bad this year. I'm saying that I'm worried about what they will do the rest of the season. They have been very good through 6 games.
They probably should have beat the Lions yesterday.
Yeah, they've been very good through 6 games. I'm telling you, I think they're peaking early. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, go ahead.
I think they're a good team. I think they're going to win 10, 11 games, maybe a playoff game, but I think that's as far as they get.
All right, noted. Everybody keep track of this right now.
Anyways, you can write it down. If Baltimore beats us by 2 touchdowns tonight, I'm going to look stupid, obviously. But that
was faded.
Okay.
See, the difference, Nathan, is that Vikings team had a negative point differential on the year. This Vikings team is smoking the crap out of everyone.
All right. I'm confident. I think the Bucs are a top 3 to 5 team in the NFC, just like the Vikings. That's all. That's my entire point.
Current form, I'll give that to you. Top 3 to 5. Current form. Yeah. Current form.
Yeah, which is what the Vikings are. That's my point.
Yeah. I mean, outside of Detroit and Minnesota, in my opinion, is the number 2. And Green Bay would be the number 3.
I think those are the top 3 for Minnesota, but all right.
I think those are the top 3, though, at this point. I think they're all in the NFC North. Outside of that, it's like, are we expecting more than a second round appearance for any of those teams outside of those top 3 right now?
Yeah.
You're expecting an NFC championship appearance for the Bucs right now.
I'm not expecting it. I'm saying it's very possible. It's also very possible for the Eagles to do it. It's very possible for the 49ers to do it.
I didn't ask possible. It's possible that the fucking Cowboys win the rest of the season. Is it probable?
What are we talking about here, dude? You can't say anything.
It's possible. It's possible that the Cowboys win out. Is that fucking probable?
I don't know. When it comes to the playoffs, What has mattered? Let's look at the AFC side of things. What has mattered on the AFC side of things? Experience in the playoffs. Sure. Who are the three most playoff experienced teams in the NFC? The Eagles, 49ers, and Buccaneers are the three most experienced playoff teams in the NFC.
You guys don't have a Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. You don't.
No, we don't have a Patrick Mahomes, but our quarterback is playing significantly better than Patrick Mahomes right now.
I mean, fuck. If he has a Mahomes level run in the playoffs, I'll give it to Baker. That's what I'll say.
I don't know, dude. My point is that Sam Darnold's eventually going to look like Sam Darnold. That's all I'm saying.
AJ's just talking shit to you right now to the chat.
Laser Mayfield. Yeah, Christian's on my... Does anybody think that the Bucs are actually a legitimate NFC contender, or am I just smoking crack right now? Like, I didn't think this was a hot take right now, that Baker Mayfield, who's leading the NFL in passing touchdowns, is playing like a good quarterback. And again, if you follow the Buccaneers, you realize we didn't have Kalijah Cansey until last week. We missed Vita Vea for a couple games. We didn't have Winfield for like 4 weeks.
To say you guys are ranked ahead of the Vikings right now is faded.
I'm not saying we're ranked ahead of the Vikings right now. I'm saying they're all in the same tier. And you're saying they're very clearly, they would dog walk us in the playoffs, which that is not at all true.
Would. Absolutely.
Okay. All righty. Baker Mayfield will also look like Baker Mayfield at some point. What do you mean? Good NFL quarterback who his teammates love and rallies his team to wins? Is that what Baker Mayfield looks like?
Anyways, so you mentioned the Browns point here. Well, I mean, this
is also a fair point by Flett here. Is that like this might just mean that there's no like clear.
There's one. I mean, it's Detroit, and then it's everybody right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyways,
so you got your Browns point, and then I mean, actually,
I already talked about it. Don't worry about it.
I mean, I'll just quickly talk about the Chiefs because I just mentioned how Mahomes experienced this and that. It's like these also are not your father's Chiefs. Can we just close your eyes for a second? Just picture this. You're back in 2018. World Cup just finished. Obviously, France taking down.
No, we're not allowed to talk about soccer on this channel.
France taking down Croatia that year in the World Cup final. Simpler time. Before COVID, simpler time. First year starting Patrick Mahomes, second year in the NFL. Over 50 touchdown passes. Throwing to first ballot Hall of Famers with Travis Kelce and with Tyreek Hill. It's a different time. Teams weren't basing cover 2. Heck, I mean, current high schoolers were in 3rd grade. I was in high school senior year myself, man. It was a different time. These are not your fucking
2018.
Yes, these were not your father's fucking Chiefs, bro. I'm telling you right now, like they know how to win. I'll give this current Chiefs team credit. They know how to win, but I can't watch this team play football. I can't.
I'm not starting Patrick Mahomes anymore. I refuse.
He's droppable. He's droppable.
I refuse.
He's droppable, straight up. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to miss the next 3 to 4 weeks. They have no consistent chain mover outside of Travis Swift on the offense. They don't know how to feature their 4-2 speed wide receiver because as much as I love Xavier Worthy, he ain't sniffing fucking prime Tyreek Hill's jockstrap. This is just not a team you want to root for. And the fucked up thing is they can walk into San Francisco, pound the shit out of Kareem Hunt, who's the only one that still looks like his 2018 himself, apparently, and win by double digits. Like that, they're a defense and run first football team now. Is that really what we've come to?
I hate watching the Chiefs. I can't stand watching their games. Like they're so irritating to watch.
It's disgusting. Like, dude, Kareem Hunt in the 2 times they got inside the 5-yard line had both their touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes threw 3 picks yesterday? 2, 3?
Yeah.
Travis Swift doesn't care about football anymore, it seems.
Mahomes is missing bombs to Xavier Worthy. He had a 75-yard touchdown that he overthrew.
Facts. Also, JRT, I'm 24 years old. That just goes to show you how different of a time that was.
Yeah. I just get Mahomes out of my life. On my Flock League team, he's caused me nothing but pain. I drafted this guy in the 4th round, and he's.
You want to hear the worst part, by the way?
So
in the one league, I traded for a share of Mahomes in Dynasty. Shout out Janner if he's watching this right now. I traded away Kyler Murray, Jaden Reed, and a 2025 first-round pick for Mahomes. Going into the year.
This year?
Going into this year.
Oof.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. This is a side note question, but in a startup draft, you are doing a startup draft today. Where does Patrick Mahomes go in Superflex startups?
I got to adjust my rankings because would you take him over Drake Maye? I don't think I would.
Yes.
I don't think I would.
I don't
think I would.
Over Drake Maye.
Why?
To me, that's a pretty faded.
Why?
Like, to me, that's an overreaction.
Why,
as much as I love Drake Maye, that's an overreaction.
Why though? There's a real possibility, but there's a real possibility by the end of the year, Drake Maye's worth a first plus.
I'm not drafting a real possibility. I'm drafting a range of outcomes. And there's a real possibility that Drake Maye has an up and down rookie season for the rest of the year.
A quarterback 2 producer that's 28 years old. That's what Mahomes is. I understand the name value matters. That's what Mahomes is. He's a quarterback 2 and he's 28.
He is, but he's still the best quarterback on planet Earth. Or at least he has been.
Yes, sure. I mean, does it matter though in fantasy? You're taking Jaden Daniels over him, right? Taking Jaden Daniels over him?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would take Jaden Daniels.
So 2 weeks time, Maye scores 20 plus points in the next 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden that take changes?
Yeah, it does.
So but that's what I'm saying. It's like with Mahomes, if we're already able to make
close
that
enough now. Like, I'm not saying it's outrageous to take Drake Maye over him. I'm saying it's close enough now. I just want to see more of a sample size on Drake Maye. It's just I'm not going to overreact to 2-game sample size, one of which was the Jaguars. I
don't disagree. I'm looking at it right now. How many wide receivers in Dynasty are you taking over Mahomes in a startup right now? How many quarterbacks are you taking over Mahomes? Because I don't think he's a first-round pick in Dynasty drafts.
He is.
Why?
Because
what advantage is he giving you?
A ton of open market value. That's the reason.
Who's trading for Mahomes at his preseason value at this point?
Nobody. I'm not saying he didn't lose value. I'm saying he's still extremely valuable on the market.
Okay, but when I'm going through it, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I'll take those receivers over him if that's your argument. I probably wouldn't, to be honest. Like I think I would still take Mahomes given the market value, but
it's a shame. A guy that we're talking about as top 2, him and Allen were the only tier entering the year, is a guy that we're talking about as a fringe potential first-round pick in startup drafts right now, and that's just based off his name value alone because his production absolutely is not worth that case. His production value alone, I just mentioned that Kyler Murray deal I did. I think just based off of production, you take Kyler over him easily.
This is where I'm at with him, where Jared, he pegs the exact range where I think I would take Mahomes also.
Yeah. I mean, even at 8th overall, I don't know if I can take him over some of those wide receivers, a couple of those quarterbacks.
That's fair. I like structurally to start my draft with QBs, so that's probably...
See, Jared, the issue that I have is they're going to have a very late pick this year. Rashee Rice is going to be either suspended or coming back off of injury next year. Travis Kelce
wasn't an ACL tear, so it's not like as long of a recovery.
Still a big recovery, and he's going to face a suspension as soon as he gets back, probably. Right?
Yeah.
Travis Kelce is going to be a year older. They're still going to be a running football team because Pacheco is going to be fully healthy. Like, at what point do we think Patrick Mahomes is going to get back to his superstar level fantasy production? I don't know. 2 years time?
Yeah, no, you're raising very valid concerns. My one point and my one counter is that you can't draft a guy that the market still thinks is a top 6 to 8 dynasty quarterback in the second round.
And I get that.
If you want to say he's a sell right now and you should sell him on name value, I think that's a fair take for sure.
I get that. But basically, I'm trying to project where we're going to be at with startups now going into the offseason. Because if he doesn't turn it around, say the rest of the year he's been performing like he has so far, is he still a top 8 pick if he keeps doing what he has been throughout the rest of the year? I think the market's going to sour on him if it keeps happening.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. Like, so right now, if I had to like pinpoint exactly where I would take Mahomes, it's like among quarterbacks in Dynasty, you're 100% taking Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts.
If we're putting Caleb and Jaden in that, I'm ready to put Drake Maye into that. I really am.
I would put him still slightly behind those guys, but I mean, I can comfortably say that Mahomes is probably QB 8 to 10 in Dynasty right now.
Yeah. I mean, like are you
given how I like to structure teams out of a startup, like QB 8 to 10 is still a back end of the first round pick.
Okay, let's go through this now. You take Mahomes or Burrow, you take Mahomes or Love.
I would take Burrow and Love over him.
So then, yeah. Now you're
at
what?
Like he'd be like
what, 10 quarterbacks?
9, 10 Q. 10
How many
QB?
wide receivers are you taking over him? At least 3,
max,
if not 4.
Yeah. I don't love taking receivers in the first round of startups, but now that we have Neighbors and Harrison added to the top 3 tier, like you could convince me that this guy's an early second round pick for sure.
And by the way, I'm not doing it to be combative. I'm just like raising these concerns because I'm thinking through it right now. Because
we're kind of Stephen A. and like Shannon Sharp this morning. I don't know what the hell's going on right now, but
I saw a comment earlier. Where is it?
2 years ago, people used to comment shit like we never disagree on a single thing.
And now we disagree on everything, apparently.
Yeah. I swear to God, we're not manufacturing this.
No, we're just very passionate football heads. And when we disagree on something, we like barking at each other, even though it's all love. For those of you that
also,
understand
someone
that.
drop an applause emoji in the chat. Danny did not mention the Cowboys one time during the NFC contender conversation.
Dude, until A, we're healthy, and B, we play like a good team, I can't put us in those discussions. If we now in 4 weeks time, if we went out there, won 3 in a row against the fucking Niners, Falcons, and I forget who we play after that, that's one thing. But until we fucking actually win some games, I'm not putting us there. Like, I'm not
also, Colin Cowherd does absolutely love him some Baker Mayfield, so you are correct about that. All I'm saying, last thing I will say on that point is Baker Mayfield's been a top 6 to 8 quarterback this year, and I don't think that's debatable.
Everybody's appreciating my lack of bias today. Shout out.
Oh, 100%. Okay, let's talk about some Dynasty trades since we're kind of in the discussion of Dynasty anyway. This one's a really interesting guy to talk about because actually both of these guys are. Mr. Wheeler sends in 2 trades that he made as a contending team, sends off Kenneth Walker and a first. I'm assuming it is not his because it doesn't say his name or his team name there. I don't think, at least. Yep. Maybe it's his. I'm not sure. Let's just assume it's mid to late for ease sake. And he gets your boy CeeDee Lamb for Kenneth Walker and a mid to late first.
Yeah, I'm doing this every single time in a 10, man.
I think this is a lot closer of a discussion now because where's Kenneth Walker rank among Dynasty running backs currently?
Well, I mean, the 2 I would take over, I mean, Brees and Bijan still.
Would you rather have Gibbs or Walker?
I think that would be a conversation. I think it would be between those 2. So at least top 5.
Yeah, I think you can argue. Like some people are going to be like, "How could you possibly take Bijan over him?" Like I personally still would, but
yeah,
I think there's going to be people out there being like, Kenneth Walker should be like RB2 in Dynasty or whatever.
And I don't think they're completely wrong. Like he's in that discussion now.
Would you rather have? I think the conversation is now Gibbs, Achane, Walker is like a tier, give or take whatever order you'd want to rank them in. I think that's probably, and maybe if you were a contender, Barkley would be in that range for you too. But I think that's kind of where the conversation is. And I think I would still slightly prefer Gibbs to Walker, slightly. Because he is a little bit younger.
You want Achane or Gibbs?
Control. That's the conversation. For sure.
Walker or
Achane or Gibbs or Achane or Walker?
I mean, all 3 of them. Straight up.
I have Achane 5th of that group. But I don't feel very confident in that take, to be honest.
As crazy as it sounds, I feel the least amount of confidence on Tua's shelf life than I do Gina's and Goff. So that might be like the default for it. Yeah. No offense to Tua, but he has a lot more risk around his standing moving forward than those guys do. Yeah, I mean, like we're having the hard conversations for sure, and we have to be honest.
So the second part of this trade is just an easy smash. Yeah. Like even if that's an early to mid projected second.
Let's just sum up the overall deals. So you basically, it's a first, second, third plus Kenneth Walker for Derrick Henry plus CeeDee Lamb as a contender. I think you're upgrading your point equity, especially if those picks project mid to late. So it does suck because I mean, like Walker obviously has looked good, but anytime I can get CeeDee and Henry as a contender here, I'm willing to give up that package.
Yeah. No, I think that's a pretty easy way to sum it up. Let's talk about Jake's trade. He has one listed here and I wanted to talk about this specifically because we were talking about Richardson earlier. He gets out of the Anthony Richardson experience. It is point per carry league, which he has listed there. I'm not sure if that applies to quarterbacks or not, but it probably does. Got James Cook, David Montgomery, and Zay Flowers. And I think the context here is very important that he's a house money team, but he wanted Richardson basically off of his team before his value creators. I think this is also my stance on Richardson right now. Like if you were a house money team with Richardson on it, the thing that can disrupt a house money winning window is holding players that can lose a shit ton of value. That's kind of like one of the biggest no-nos of house money teams, which is why
feels like a bad time to sell though.
Yeah, like, I guess.
Do you think Anthony Richardson's going to have terrible games every week moving forward, or do you think he's going to have a week where he's 27 PPR points and you have a better sell window? Like, that's what I view it as. He's going to be volatile, but I think there's better peaks coming along with these valleys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Case says, what's a house money team? Basically, a house money team just means that you're probably a year away from contending, but you have picks and young players
the structure.
To the point that, like, for example, if you were a house money team coming into this year and you had a bunch of young players and a bunch of picks, and maybe you drafted some young running backs that ended up hitting like Bucky Irving or whatever in the 3rd round of your rookie draft. And you already had a young wide receiver core, young quarterback core, Caleb's producing now for you, things of that nature. Like if you think of how the Houston Texans roster is built in the real life NFL, they're like a house money team. So they're they could contend this year, but they're still very young and could contend in future years.
So Case, like for example, when you look at your teams in your dynasty leagues, You'll see like the bottom feeders, for example, that are 1-5, 1-6 after this week potentially. And you can make a determination. Do they have the value on their dynasty roster to potentially maneuver pieces to compete if they wanted to, or are they a barren roster? A barren roster would be a complete rebuilding team, a team that if they moved potentially some picks or potentially some young pieces into production, they could compete, but maybe would only be a 4 to 6 seed this year. Whereas if they waited the next year, could be a top 3 team. That's basically what we refer to when we say house money, in the sense that you have the structure and you have the makings to add production, but you're waiting a year because you want to optimize the production value that you have.
Yeah, and more importantly, too, you're usually waiting a couple weeks into the season to see if you are having things break right for you. Because sometimes you go into the season thinking you have a house money team and 2 of your starting wide receivers got hurt for 6 games or whatever. Like if you had a house money team that was built around Nico Collins and Rashee Rice, for example, this year, you were probably thinking after the first couple of weeks of the season, oh, I should go buy running backs right now. But then Nico Collins and Rashee Rice go down, and you're probably happy that you didn't do something like that. So that's kind of what we mean by that.
But I just saw this real quick. If you're getting offered HN and Josh Allen for Gibbs and Mahomes right now, you're taking it every single time. Allen side all day.
Oh yeah, all day for sure. And just on this specific trade, what are your thoughts on the actual package he received? James Cook, Zay Flowers, David Montgomery. Do you think you're selling low at that point?
No, I'm not. The reason why is because these guys are all production pieces outside of maybe Zay Flowers, who I think will hold more market value moving forward. With James Cook and David Montgomery, as much as I like James Cook, he's a younger running back. At the same time, the basis of his value is competing points. And the problem that I have is, for example, David Montgomery just went with an MCL sprain. Like if Cook missed any time, there are very much assets that won't retain value year to year. So if I'm going to make this deal, the structure that I would have preferred, could you have gotten Zay Flowers plus a first rounder in exchange for Anthony Richardson if you're going to move Anthony Richardson? Because I would want at least the first rounder to be able to supplement back a quarterback with upside, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it as like, okay, where does Anthony Richardson rank in startups right now? 3rd, 4th round?
Yeah.
Probably. So,
well, I mean, let's go through it right now. For example, dynasty quarterback position. So I had Anthony Richardson at 12. I will be moving him down. Are you taking Richardson or are you taking Purdy?
I would rather have Brock Purdy.
Taking Richardson or Lawrence?
Lawrence.
Richardson or Dak?
It would depend on the team.
Richardson probably or JJ McCarthy?
I'd rather have McCarthy.
So then he's probably about quarterback 17 or 18 on the market right now.
Okay, so if he's quarterback 17 or 18 and Zay Flowers is a top 24 dynasty receiver,
yeah,
how much further in startups are they going from each other? And then you also factor in that James Cook is probably a 5th, 6th round startup pick, and David Montgomery a good
value-wise is probably there. It's just my issue is if you're not a top contender, I guess maybe if that trade makes you a top contender, you mentioned you're in a contending window now, it makes more sense. But the also thing is he said he's thin at quarterback. Like, what's he doing at the quarterback position to trade away Anthony Richardson? Because I'm not trading him without getting quarterback.
If you're a house money team, realistically, you don't actually need a quarterback.
But he said he wants to contend, and the only way I'd be trading for those 2 productive running backs if I can contend. If you're weaker at the quarterback position now, my worry is without getting a quarterback equity piece back, what are you doing at quarterback? Because Anthony Richardson is probably a guy you drafted as your quarterback 1 or quarterback 2 on your team. What are the rest of your position looking like at the quarterback?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a fair point. Let me ask you this question too. Who is quarterback 2 in Dynasty right now?
I have Stroud, but I think you can say Daniels.
I have Lamar at 2. So
I have Lamar at 4. But like I think so right now, and Drake Maye also is going up.
Yeah, we're going to do an update to our Dynasty rankings today and tomorrow, and probably an update to the Dynasty trade value chart. So if you guys are interested in that, that's over on flockfantasy.com, which is linked down below in the description. But yeah, there's a lot of conversations that I need to have. How I update my rankings is usually like going through ranges of outcomes and having these conversations. Plus me and you talk about it a lot and text back and forth about who we would rather have and stuff. But I think gun to my head right now, I would rather have Lamar Jackson than CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels.
And to be honest, like I think at least I have to move Daniels and Jackson over Stroud, because we've seen when Nico Collins has been out, they've reverted to a run first team. It's kind of
and he's also a passing quarterback too, so his weekly ceiling is not nearly as high. Like if Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud are both franchise QBs that any team would be lucky to build around, then you absolutely have to take Jane Daniels in fantasy.
Yeah. So I the way I've adjusted it so far right now, I don't know how I feel because there's a lot to unpack here. And again, you guys are, if you're on the site, are going to be able to see the full updates because we will be posting A on the trade value chart and B on the site this week. But where I've ended up, like I said, I'm fine aggressively ranking Drake Maye. I have Caleb Williams at 6. I have Drake Maye at 7 now.
So you have Drake Maye over Mahomes,
Kyler, Love, Burrow, and Herbert.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can get there with Drake Maye over Kyler and maybe Mahomes, but I don't think I can get there with Drake Maye over like Hurts and Burrow and those guys.
Oh, I have Hurts, I have Stroud, I have Caleb right above him.
I think you have Burrow too low. I don't know where you have Burrow, but I would imagine it's like 10.
I do, but like I think production value, he's similar for me with him, Murray, and Love, and he's the oldest of that group. So I would prefer Murray and Love. I think they're all same tier, though.
I don't think he's similar in terms of production value and year over year holding his value. I like Burrow over Murray pretty comfortably.
Again, I don't mind if you want to rank Burrow 10 or 8. Sorry, it's just I think they are, like I said, similar in terms of production, but a little bit younger. So I prefer them. I don't think it's crazy to say you would take Burrow over any of those guys, though.
No, yeah, I think Burrow represents.
I think Mahomes has to be after all 3 of those guys, though. I have Mahomes at 11 right now.
I have Mahomes at 9. I still have him over Murray and Maye, but that's dwindling with every passing day.
Yeah. The reason why I have Drake Maye this aggressive, and I understand there is risk here, but everything that we've seen so far in the first 2 weeks has pointed to him, like you said. When you see the signs of a young quarterback being a good quarterback, you should tend to follow him. If you told me by the end of the year that Drake Maye keeps doing what he's doing with this supporting cast, they pick top 3 to 5, add another piece, I think he has quarterback 1 overall in dynasty upside.
Oh, he absolutely does. He absolutely does. If he has a monster rookie season, let's say he doesn't win offensive rookie of the year,
he runs too
or whatever. He does run too. Let's say he's a monster rookie season. He plays like a Pro Bowler the rest of the year, and it's very, very clear that he has elevated the play of a very bad Patriots offense. And they draft Tet McMillan with the 3rd pick in the draft. Like he's going to have a monster career ahead of him. So let me just, because we were talking about Richardson there for a second. Let me ask you this. Because this is a territory that we don't usually dip below when it comes to like putting a guy down the rankings. Between these 3 quarterbacks, who would you rather have? Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson.
I think you got to go Richardson because we know what the value setting of the other 2 guys are.
Okay, well, both of those other guys
they're all producing him
productive right now.
I would say if you wanted to tier down, quote unquote, from Richardson to those guys, I'm fine with it, especially as
I don't think you're getting that on the open market right now.
What do you think you're getting? Because the way I go about it is if Anthony Richardson starts looking good, he could be a top 7-8 dynasty quarterback. Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff have been good. But that's the thing. It's like with Mayfield and with Goff, what's their dynasty market ceiling? Like, I think it's an aspect where if you want production, obviously those guys are outproducing and you take them. But if you're a house money team and you want the asset that can gain the most value, it's Anthony Richardson. It's not close between those guys. So it really depends what you're prioritizing. If you're competing, obviously you're taking the better projections this year than him.
I'm getting scared. I'm getting scared that Anthony Richardson is Trey Lance all over again, man. I'm getting scared. I'm getting really scared. A gun in my head right now, I would rather have Tua than Anthony Richardson.
I wouldn't. I mean, we've seen the floor of the market value for Tua, and it has not been great.
No, it hasn't been. But if I was a house money team tearing off of Anthony Richardson, I would go target Tua and plus for Richardson right now. I'm scared, man. I'm scared Richardson is not an NFL quarterback.
I mean,
I've seen enough of this dude to say that he might not be he just might be bad.
Yeah. Crazy combos. Do we have another dynasty trade here? Or are we going to waivers?
We do. We have one more, and then we'll rip through the quick early look at the waivers. I'll drop my waiver TikTok later tonight, around the time the game starts, and then the waiver video will be live on the channel. I'll be doing that one this week.
Definitely would wait after Monday night to record the waiver video because there are 2 in particular huge pieces if the starter were to go down to them, and that is Trey Benson and Kamani Vidal. If you guys are watching right now, if Connor or Dobbins go down, we're talking blow all the fucking budget.
Well, and also too potentially some of the Bucks running backs as well because of how the backfield is shaking out at the moment.
Which, by the, as a Bucks fan, like, what are you hearing on that? What I've heard is like
I heard they're all going to get a series, and whoever gets looks the best, and we all know who's going to look the worst of the three is going to be the starting back that week. And to be honest, I think this is going to change every game. I think it's going to be Bucky one week and Tucker another week. Maybe Rashad has a couple good receiving plays another week. Like, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a fucking mess. Honestly, it's a better and best ball. I'm glad I drafted a lot of Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker because I'm also glad I did not draft much of Rashad White at all.
Yeah. By the way, I appreciate that, Chasing Breakers. Drake Maye playing flag looking good. Yeah. I mean, it
doesn't look good over Daniels. Yeah. Let's make that clear.
Well, the one thing I will say is, like, looking back, I should have done everything in my power to make sure I was in the top 5 of every single rookie draft. Because, like, we knew at the time that the 2 wide receivers and the 3 quarterbacks were at that level. Like, we were talking about Drake Maye as being our 103 for a while. And we said, even though we were lower on Jaden Daniels' film, he had to be a top 5 rookie pick because of the rushing and because of the quarterback insulation. But looking back, man, I wish, even if I had 106 plus 109, why wasn't I offering both those picks to move up into the top 5 every time? Like, the only one of the top 5 you're, like, disappointed on right now is the generational wide receiver prospect. Because, I mean, I got to ask this. I still believe in Marv long term. But if you have to rank them right now, in what world can you rank him behind Brian Thomas Jr. moving forward? In what world?
In Dynasty?
Yeah. Brian Thomas Jr. looks like Nico Collins already.
I know. It's hard. It's hard. Dude, I have no idea how I would rank. Like, I am still, if you told me gun to my head right now, would you rather have Marvin Harrison or Brian Thomas in Dynasty? I would still rather have Marvin Harrison, but you give me 2 more weeks and that statement might change.
Well, like, I mean, let's play through it. Again, we're spending a lot of time, but we won't spend as much moving forward. But
hey, you know what? We don't talk Dynasty enough. And honestly, I was going to tell you before this stream that we should probably do a Dynasty video on Wednesday or something. Like,
let's do it.
I don't know what we want to do necessarily, but we could do something for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely do something. Maybe even like a mid-season startup or something. Oh, we'll figure it out. Like startup mock, but we'll figure it out anyways. Going through it. So going into the week, I had it Lamb 1, Jefferson 2, Chase 3, Malik 4. Sorry, Nico was at 6. I'm on deciding between these guys. Like, the top 9 Dynasty wide receivers at this point have just separated.
Who's the 9th?
Brian Thomas now, and I think Drake London has to be in.
Okay, well, I have him at 8. So who's the 9th?
London.
Okay, that's who.
You have London at 9 too.
I had him at 10. I had Puka still ahead of him, but I would probably take London ahead of Puka now.
Yeah. And then, like, here's a question: AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson with Devontae there?
I still have Garrett higher.
I think that's the combo. T. Higgins maybe has to be like over Olave at this point, I would say, and Waddle and Devontae Smith.
Nap Ayuk now, which is
Brandon Ayuk. See you later, alligator. I think he's got to be below at least Metcalf and Hill. Yeah, there's a lot of work that we need to be doing through these because there's so much that's changed in the last couple of weeks since he's gotten updated.
That's what we got. That's why we need to. I mean, I updated mine I think 2.5 weeks ago, and it feels like an eon ago that they were updated. Like, I'm like, how much has changed since then? Like, it's crazy.
We'll make sure you guys are covered there because I mean, like, I think this has been the biggest things have changed across the first 7 weeks that I can recall in a while in Dynasty.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm seeing the chat's reaction too, and I think they're right. I think Garrett Wilson is behind AJ Brown.
I moved him behind AJ Brown.
Yeah, AJ's production value is just too high.
Now we get into the discussion of Garrett versus Jaden Reed, Puka Nacua, Rome Odunze.
You have Jaden Reed all the way up there, eh?
Yeah.
I do too. I just thought I was alone.
Yeah, I do. Now that I'm looking at it, I think you probably have to have Puka ahead of those guys. So then
one guy Garrett, I think that everybody is too low on, that I don't think anybody's going to agree with me on this take. I have Zay Flowers, my wide receiver 15 in Dynasty, dude.
I don't have him that high because I am very nervous about the week-to-week volume of that offense. But with that being said, in Smash Mods, I mean, he's shown he's an elite player. First of all, like,
he's an excellent separator, playing for an MVP candidate quarterback for the next 3 to 4 years. Like, I really don't think people realize how good Zay Flowers could be as, like, he's already I compared him to Jalen Waddle's career arc coming into the year. I said, hey, year 1, he had a pretty good season, good separator. Year 2, Jalen Waddle was a 15-point per game scorer. I think that's about what Zay Flowers will be at the end of this year. And then year 3, we never got to see Jalen Waddle take another step because Tyreek is there. So I could see Flowers taking like a 20-point per game upside step in year 3, potentially. That's why I'm like kind of projecting him as potentially better than most people are.
The issue I have, I'm fine if you rank him over T. Higgins, but it's crazy when you contextualize that. Is he not the same age as Higgins? Are they not both 25, or is Zay 2000? Zay's either 2000 or 99.
Let me take a look. I think he's a 2000, but let me look really quick.
God,
he's 2000. September 11th, 2000.
Okay, so he's a year. Like, honestly, it's crazy with that context. I think they're so close that because of that, I'm going to put Flowers one spot higher. I moved Flowers to 15. I still can't take him over Odunze, Reed, and Wilson, though.
Yeah, like I think Flowers belongs in the conversation because when you factor in the pass volume, he's at least in that same breadth or same area as Smith, Higgins, Waddle, the guys that are in better pass volume situations but are not the number one. But I actually would prefer Flowers to all of those guys personally. So that's where I'm at with it. It's close though. But yeah, we did have one more last Dynasty trade that I just wanted to rattle through quick because it does involve Jaden Reed, which is why I think it's interesting to talk about now.
So you got the better wide receiver asset and upgraded your first round pick. Congratulations.
Yeah, not to mention it's an Empire League, which for those of you guys that don't know means that the pot is bigger every 4 years typically is common, I think. For Empire Leagues. But basically it's like Olympic style where every 4 years the pot is like twice as big or whatever. So it makes sense to, if you're retooling, aim for that first window where you can win that bigger pot.
Sorry. I just got, after getting as passionate as I was about fucking Drake Maye and some of these Dynasty players, like I'm like cooling off right now.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the early waiver stuff. Pivoting away from Dynasty again, we'll probably let us know in the comments. What do you guys want to see Dynasty related this week? We could do I would love to do Dynasty decisions. A lot of people have been clamoring for that. The only thing is that that only helps, 8 people or whatever, however many teams we cover. We could definitely do one. We could even just release that as a site exclusive for people that are,
I think that would probably be the best way to approach it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We could just drop it on the channel too. It's not a big deal, but I want to ideally put out a Dynasty video that helps more than just the people that we're covering in the Dynasty decisions.
Agreed.
Video, but let's talk about the waiver slate here. It's an interesting slate, mainly receivers that are available as good.
I dropped Pearsall in our fucking listener league right before Ayuk went down because you can just get to number 1 and talk about the role that he potentially has in this offense.
We don't do it that way. We go 5-1.
Sorry, my bad.
Anyways, I have my sheet pretty much done for like what I'm looking at on the waiver slate, at least early. Because I'm going to do my waiver TikTok at some point today. For me, the number 5 option here is Ray Davis. I think Ray Davis has a pretty good contingent role. I'm not really too concerned the fact that, James Cook was a little bit less of a big workhorse this week and Ray Davis worked into the backfield. I still tend to think it'll be James Cook's role. But what I do know about Ray Davis is now that when he gets an opportunity to start, he's actually going to be good. He was a top 11 running back on Monday Night Football in week 6. And James Cook is still dealing with like turf toe. It's a painful injury. It can flare up. So for me, he's just a really good stash, not necessarily somebody that I think you can throw into your lineup right away, but he's my number 5 waiver ad for that reason. Dontavian Wicks, I have at 4, who Danny dropped in our Flock League on, Friday or whatever it ended up being, or when did you end up dropping him?
So basically, I dropped him. When did I drop him? I dropped him to pick up my kicker because Aubrey was on bye. I can't. I'm not dropping Brandon Aubrey, the kicker one.
Okay. So now you've to stash bub means you dropped you dropped Wicks and Dak. That's where we're at with this. Dope. But Wicks is also kind of like Ray Davis, where he's like this contingent triple handcuff wide receiver where you're probably never going to feel comfortable starting him as long as Watson, Dobbs, and Reed are healthy, but he commands targets. I mean, 28% targets per route run this year, catches a long touchdown in this game. It is possible that 46% snap share was also due to the fact that he was coming into the game with an AC sprain, where he could be more of a 70% guy or whatever going forward. I mean, the real value of Wicks is that he just needs to be rostered. Like anything happens to any of the other top guys, he's an immediate can start any given week. I know he was disappointing when he got the opportunity the last couple of weeks or so, but he's just one of these like better and best ball guys, and he has to be rostered for that reason.
Yeah, he's tough though.
He's annoying. He's really annoying. Like, we keep talking about him in waivers, but he needs to be rostered. That's where I'm at with Wicks. He needs to be on people's teams.
He does, and I believe in him, but I thought, okay, maybe with more added time, with Romeo Dubs out of the lineup, with Christian Watson dealing with an injury, he would have been able to at least prove himself as a full-time player, and that just simply hasn't materialized. It hasn't.
No, he fumbled the bag on his one opportunity to do that. My number 3 ad here is Troy Franklin, Broncos wide receiver. He had 67% of the routes the last 2 games, did command a 25% target share, 27% targets per route run on Thursday night against the Saints, and he has had 2 games now of over 10 PPR points. An interesting player. Obviously, we liked him as a prospect. He was a guy that most of the fantasy community thought was going to be a top 5, 6, 7, 8 wide receiver in the class, and he fell to the 4th round, and then the Broncos drafted him, and when we broke down the wide receivers to target and avoid, I mentioned that he was one of the highest rated sleeper receivers in the prospect model, comparable to that of Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys that never should have slid to day 3 but did. So definitely an interesting prospect, and a guy that is playing with his current college quarterback, has chemistry with him already. Nix doesn't look great, but if you recall the throw that went viral that everybody was talking shit about, where Bo Nix managed to miss in between 2 defenders on a layered throw of missing. I don't know if you noticed this throw that happened on Thursday night. Troy Franklin was wide open for a touchdown on that throw, like wide open. So if he has a monster game as opposed to just a subtle good usage but not big in the box score game, he might be the number 1 waiver ad by far of the week right now. So for me, I feel pretty good that you're getting ahead of your league mates right now by picking up Franklin. He's only 8% rostered too, so I'd imagine everybody's league has him available for the most part. I picked him up in a lot of our leagues so far, so I already have him on my roster in the Flock League and in our listener league, but he's definitely the type of guy that you want to stash for the end of your bench, because with rookies, man, as the season goes along, they start to produce more.
Sorry, I just saw that.
It literally was like what we say as a layered throw in terms of like scouting, where a defender's throwing like a hole, or a quarterback's throwing like a hole shot over like a cover 2 flat look or whatever. Like we saw with Drake May constantly when he was at North Carolina.
And that C2 honey hole, baby.
Yeah, he threw a honey hole throw, but instead of 2 defenders, it was 2 of his own players.
Yeah, it's like I have 2 guys wide open. Why not throw a raid in between them and see who's more active for it, who's more competitive?
It was like he saw both of them open as he was cocking the throwback, and he was like, "Oh, do I throw it to the short or to the deep?" And I'm like, "I'll throw it to both." It was just
wait. Which one did Coach Payton say I have to throw to here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the answer for that question would probably be the short one, but Troy Franklin was like literally wide ass open. So in terms of
he's a system quarterback.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, all these guys, by the way, too, are not like super big fab ads. I would say Franklin probably anywhere between 5 and 10% of your budget, and then Wicks and Ray Davis would probably be even less than that.
These top
Cedric
2
Tillman,
separate, though. Yeah.
What's up?
I was gonna say these top 2, as we'll get into, separate from the rest, though.
Yeah. I think Tillman and Franklin are somewhat comparable, but it depends what you need. If you're looking for a good stash, I think Franklin and Tillman are somewhat comparable. But if you need production, I think Tillman is a little bit more of a desperation ad. Right now, he had an 82% route participation, 23% targets per route run, 24% target share. Led the Browns this week with 12 targets, 127 air yards, and 81 yards receiving. David Njoku obviously had a great performance, and he led the team in target share. But
one thing there, Njoku, no Amari Cooper. I don't think there's a too high you can rank him rest of the season.
No, I don't think there. I think you can only comfortably say realistically that Brock Bowers and maybe Trey McBride or
I'm not even going that far.
Yeah, like you could make the argument right now that you would rather have David Njoku over Travis Kelce rest of the season.
Very easily, I would make that argument.
I would still rank Kelce 1 spot higher, but he would be like, I think Njoku's like tight end 3.
To me, I think there's a clear top 5 tight ends, and then I personally would have Ferguson at 6. If not, like I think him and Kelce's close for me, to be honest. But then when we go through like the top 4, in my opinion, outside of Kelce, I think any way you want to rank it between Bowers, Njoku, Kittle, and McBride, it's fine for me.
Yeah, no, you can definitely get me there as well. It's very reasonable. But Tillman, for what it's worth, has potentially Jameis Winston starting at quarterback. We don't exactly know what's going to happen here. We know Watson's out for the year. Could be DTR, could be Jameis Winston. whatever the case is, Cedric Tillman is definitely going to be a top 40 to 45, 50 wide receiver on any given week, probably. I mean, Jerry Jeudy is still there. Is Jerry Jeudy good? I'm not sure. Probably not. David Njoku is the number one here. Like, I think people might go a little crazy on Tillman. I liked him as a prospect. I thought he was fine.
Good,
but I'm not
a big X receiver.
Yeah, like I'm not going to go crazy on Tillman. I think 5 to 10. That's why I think him and Franklin are more so like in the same tier, where it's like 5 to 10% of your fab budget, maybe 15% if you were really desperate for wide receivers, is the most that I would be willing to put up for those guys. And the best ad on the week, by far, in my opinion, is either of Juwan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall. Juwan Jennings is 36% rostered, Ricky Pearsall 25% rostered. I prefer Pearsall of the two of them, because Pearsall was the first round pick, the guy who was a little bit more productive. And it was his first game last week, and he had 86% of the routes, 18% target share. And when Jennings had his monster performances without Brandon Ayuk on the field, Pearsall wasn't there. So is it going to factor in where Jennings is just immediately going back to where he was in like week 3, week 4, when he was this like really productive guy? Or is Pearsall going to be the guy that actually benefits the most from an Ayuk injury?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends, because with Juwan Jennings, I think he's more of a prototypical X receiver, which is what Brandon Ayuk's been playing for that team. But Pearsall is more so a fit in the offense. So it's like, I don't know how to debate them. All I know is both need to be rostered, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're in like a deep league, by the way, even like, let's just say like a deep dynasty league, deep best ball league too, he didn't get obviously the snaps over Pearsall, but in the snaps he did play, I think Cowing's a good shout in terms of like a super, super deep dart throw, because again, limited snaps, I'm not going to go overboard there. He's obviously just going to be a free pickup. Like, I'm not spending fab on him, but in the limited sample size he had, he actually did make a couple plays. So I am curious to see. But with that being said, if I had to rank the Niners receivers now with Brandon Ayuk out, Pearsall, Jennings, and then later down the board, if you want a deep dart throw, I think Cowing has some upside.
Yeah. And I'm actually, because somebody asked about this in the comments, who would you rather have, George Kittle or David Njoku rest of the season without Ayuk there? I think the answer is Kittle, personally.
If DTR is the quarterback, Kittle. If Winston's the quarterback, Njoku.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think regardless, knowing that DTR / Winston is the quarterbacks you're dealing with versus Purdy, I think it's Kittle for me, no matter what.
Fair. I just think like you're looking at a legitimate 15 plus PPR point per game ceiling if Winston's the quarterback, because we know he's just going to chuck the ball down the field.
Oh, absolutely. I love Njoku. The other, to me, I think there's a very clear top 5 tight ends, give or take, where it's Bowers, it's Kittle. I mean, we rip on Kelsey, but like, there's no Juju now and no Rice. Like, Kelsey's going to catch passes.
For sure. Like, I think personally for me, like Kelsey's closer to Ferguson than the others, simply because I have talent question marks at this point with Kelsey versus the others.
And then I still think, I mean, we'll see what happens tonight, but I still think McBride belongs in this conversation as well.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. No, I considered him already. Yeah.
I have Njoku at 5 right now. That's where that's where he settled in for me. One spot ahead of Ferguson, and then like Pitts has been playing well too. Like, I mean, you could even make the argument that him and Ferguson and Njoku is kind of a conversation. Laporta's at 8 for me right now, because Laporta's just not.
That might even be too high. Are you taking?
It might be, honestly.
I'm taking Engram over Laporta the rest of the season and sleeping like a baby.
I think you're probably right, to be honest.
Like, at this point, do we hope it's still the copium factor that we want to see him get back to his usage last year? I'm afraid that Sam Laporta usage is gone. We're not getting that. They're running the ball too well. They have too many good pieces on offense. The other thing that we didn't consider is we talked about how, they have all these fucking weapons like JMO, Amon-Ra, Gibbs, Dave Montgomery, Laporta. They're also competing with fucking Khalif Raymond and Tim Patrick, it feels like. Like, there's almost 8 guys that touch the football for this team any given week. So, again, that's why I was a little bit more concerned with Amon. Now, obviously, Amon-Ra, great game, don't get me wrong. But like, when we're comparing like some of the other stud wide receivers, it's just that the Lions are the team that it almost feels like they throw anybody in and they do well. And it's similar with the Niners, for example. Like Juwan Jennings, we didn't expect to be anything over 45 PPR points. Pearsall obviously has some upside. Cowing comes and makes play. It's like, when you have these great offenses and these great schemes, it almost feels like you could throw anybody into the lineup or any given play and they'll make a play. So that's what I'm a little bit worried about.
St. Brown was the number 1 receiver on the week, right? What are you worried about St. Brown for?
I'm just saying in relation to like the Chase to Jefferson. I still think he's a stud. Don't get me wrong. But basically, I'm more so making the point for Laporta, where it's like, We know Amonra's going to be there. We know Jameson's going to be there. We knew the running backs were going to be there. But now that we're seeing like Patrick and Raymond and all these other guys get usage in the offense, I'm concerned. When is it going to be the Laporta week? Does that even happen? Like he's getting 1 to 2 targets.
Laporta and JMO stand to lose quite a bit from these random guys popping up. I mean, St. Brown's been over 20 PPR points in 4 of his last 5 games, so I'm not worried at all.
It wasn't disrespect on Amon for the record. He's still clearly an elite tier 1 wide receiver. I'm just saying, like, if I had to poke holes versus him versus Chase and versus Jefferson, that's why I would lean those other guys, is what I'm trying to say.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, Pearsall to me is the top waiver ad. Jennings also same kind of thing there. If I had to go out and spend fab on either of these 2 guys, personally, I would put in a bigger bid for Pearsall than I would for Jennings. I think Pearsall is probably worth about 15-20% of your budget, whereas Jennings, I'd probably want it around 10-12%, even though I think Jennings is going to come back and play a big role and probably even right away might be a little bit better than Pearsall. I trust that the first round pick is eventually going to take over. You know what I mean? Like Jennings is on like an RFA contract and Ricky Pearsall was drafted in the first round. It's like a pretty big difference of a team investment.
For sure. Again, I prefer Pearsall, the one of the Niners and Silver receivers, but like I think it could be a situation where like whoever plays the best is going to end up getting the snaps, and like that's what I'm a little bit concerned of. Now, Dylan, yes, JMO had -4 yards this week, and he actually only had 9 yards in week 3. But the problem is that he's also had 75 yards in 4 of his 6 games as well. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that you can't really predict where the production is going to come from on a week-to-week basis. Because like Jameson, for example, he was one of my sell-high wide receivers for that reason. He came off 2 straight games of long touchdowns, 16 and 17.7 PPR points in those respective games. But because this offense doesn't function on one player dominating on a week-to-week basis, other than maybe Amon, or like I said, you can't really predict what's going to happen in terms of where the ball goes, because it's not like Goff's throwing the ball 45 times. He's still been an efficient 25 to 30 on a week-to-week basis. So if we know all these guys are able to produce on any given play, it's tough to trust all of them, knowing that it's a low passing volume offense to begin with.
Yeah, JMO, a better version of Gabe Davis. I mean, I would say it's a little mean towards JMO, but yeah, it's kind of essentially the point, is that he is going to be a little bit more boomer bust for that reason. But Danny, if you have anything else, we can talk about it quick. We've been on here for an hour and a half. Again, if you guys have enjoyed us yapping for the last, especially in the middle portion, we were yapping. So if you guys did enjoy that, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel. If you guys are new around here, comment down below any of your thoughts. Again, if you do want to see something specific Dynasty related, comment it after the stream is over so we can see those comments. Afterwards, we will be live tonight before the game. Go Bucks, of course, Bucks and Ravens tonight. And then the obligatory 9 p.m. Eastern kickoff of the Cardinals and Chargers makes me want to die. But I'll probably still watch the first half at least of that game for the most part. And then make sure to follow. Tomorrow I'll have you guys with waiver stuff on Tuesday, and then I'll have stuff over on TikTok too if you guys are interested. Sure. I already have my picks up for the Monday night slate, but we'll break that down on Monday on the stream tonight. If you guys want to see that, make sure to tune in for that. Do a 2024 rookie redraft. That could be fun for sure.
Yes.
That would be a lot of fun. But anyways, with that being said, we'll head out of here. Peace out. We'll talk to you soon.